soft skills are so important, and oftentimes they're one of the last things that we think about. However, the real value can come from mastering and commanding those skills and really adding more value than sometimes some of the things we get caught up in just doing unconsciously throughout the day. So Catherine is going to bring some of those things to light, and hopefully there'll be some good takeaways. Dr. Adams is with us from time to time. Will say, if we could get one nugget, I hope you're going to collect several nuggets today, but I'm confident that it won't be a waste of time. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. So Catherine, we're glad that you could join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Carl. I'm just so pleased to be with you all today. Let me get us started. We're so glad to make some new friends here today and to get to visit with you. The talk of our webinar is entitled How to Grow Your Business in a Time of Stress. I don't even like to say the word stress because I don't want to feel stressed. I know, but nobody wants to. It tamps down creativity. It actually is, there's hardly anything good that comes from when our mind and body feels reactive and feels in stress. I'm going to talk a little bit about how that affects our selling and what we can do to have very specific strategies to move away from those feelings and actually take action to grow our business in during this time, because I believe it's possible. I'm seeing innovation happening, all kinds of amazing things happening. So we're talking about how the first 7 weeks, maybe we're thinking this the last week or so, a little bit less, but certainly the first month of sheltering in place and all the things we're experiencing as I'm speaking here in Houston, Texas. And I know for my friends and colleagues locally, there was a lot of discussion about how long will it take before we get back to business as usual? What will that look like? And I saw some people make a very deliberate strategy to just kind of hunker down. I know some people had 1 month's cash savings for their business. Some people had 1 year's worth of cash saving for their business, and everywhere in between. And you'd see all kinds of responses, but some people would say, I'm just going to wait. Others saw this opportunity and said, this isn't what I would have come to me on purpose. It isn't what I would want, but it might be making me think of things I wouldn't have thought of either way. Maybe I had a building that was actually bigger than I needed. Maybe I needed to look at my operational processes and look at my overhead expenses anyway. Maybe we haven't diversified the way we sell our product anyway, and now this is making me do that. All different kinds of people who are coming into this and have different perspectives and different experiences. And what I'm saying today, I do not want you to think in any way, please let me give you this disclaimer. There are probably people on here who own restaurants and bars. There are people who have rely heavily on in-person experiences for travel, maybe even people in the travel industry or transportation industry that are struggling right now. And I know that is true for some percent of our population. And my heart goes out to you if that's the case, because it's going to be harder to pivot. It's not impossible, but it's going to be harder to pivot. And some of this is going to be about a waiting game. But my experience in consulting with companies all over the country, and in the last 7 weeks, I have interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of business owners in the sales consulting practice that I have. And what I'm seeing is that people in general are under communicating and they're not selling enough right now. We need to be selling now. Now, the way that you used to sell might need to be different. It probably needs to be different, but that you need to be selling right now is not really optional, because not many of us have a year's worth of cash reserves where we can just sit around and wait and see what happens. That isn't what we want to be doing. This is actually an opportunity and a time to really be in touch with our customers, to be looking at the core offers that we have and what problem it solves for our customers, and then be innovating. How do we maybe deliver that same service or product or something different that helps our customers in a new way? When we feel stuck because we're afraid, we don't sell well. This is the fight or flight. And what happens in my experience is that it's really not just fight or flight. When we feel like we're under duress, sometimes we just freeze too. And I see a lot of freezing going on, and I want to give you some tools not to have that happen. I have 2 key points, 2 main principles. The first one that I want to talk to you about is really about, this is a psychological principle in selling. Just by being a human being, we interpret things around us and we make meaning of everything in life. We are meaning makers. The problem is that we don't always make things mean the right thing because they're always subject to our own interpretation. Understanding that we bring meaning to all of our situations has everything to do with how we'll sell right now. Let me show you what that means. There are 3 ways we make meaning out of everything that comes to us. One is the meaning we make about systems and things with the world. This is what I call our worldview. The second is in people situations, people to people. So these are in sales interactions. And the third is meaning that we bring to the way we talk to ourself, our own self-talk, which is a really big part of selling during this time. So let's look first at world. When I say world, I interchangeably use the word worldview. Okay, now we all have these, right? We all have fixed views about things that are not always right. There was a sales trainer named Ron Willingham whose work and training in books has so shaped me and served me in my professional development. And his book, which is called The Inner Game of Selling, he gives this alternative definition. What if instead of pushy, sleazy, and doesn't listen, what if we think of selling as a process of identifying or satisfying people's wants or needs? And more importantly is sentence number 2, that selling is creating extra value for them above the price they pay you for it. You guys, a perfect example of extra value is Carl inviting me to do the webinar here today. Not because I'm doing it perfectly, but because he's thinking, how do I help my friends, colleagues, and clients flourish? How do I promote flourishing? So it's not just about needs, but also about their wants, right? And extra value is purposely undefined here. It can be everything from when every 2 weeks when my family orders takeout from the place up the road, which we enjoy, we love to support his business, especially during this time. And when he throws in extra egg rolls, that's extra value. Okay, but it could also be just checking on your customers. It could be about being a resource of information for people. There's all kinds of ways you can be offering extra value. Now, remember, our first principle is that people are meaning makers. Now let's talk about people to people situations. This is where the rubber meets the road with selling. I have you this picture of this old rotary phone. This is like a phone that would be at my grandmother's house when I was growing up. What if, let's say I make a call to Carl and I want to do something for Carl and I want to sell something to his company, okay, as an example. If I place a call and I leave a message and nobody calls me back, and a couple days pass and my reminder comes up on my calendar, says, hey, Catherine, if you don't hear from Carl, call back. I have a decision to make. When I see that reminder on my calendar and I think, oh, that's interesting, he didn't call me back, I have to decide what that means. Where most people go wrong, where most people err, especially right now because they feel anxious and under duress and worried about their neighbor during the situation that we're in right now, what they decide is they start to make up a story. In the absence of information, they start to make up a story and they think things like, you know, maybe when he said that he'd be glad to hear from me, maybe he didn't really mean it. Maybe when we met at that event and he gave me his card and said, let me know anytime I can help you, maybe he was just being nice. Maybe, you know, they said they wanted to buy that thing from me. And this isn't about Carl, this is just in general, right? You know what I'm saying is this could happen to any of us for any product or service, but I hear it all the time. You swap cards at a Chamber of Commerce event, you come back, you call them, they don't call you back. Your prospect doesn't call you back, and you start to decide what it means. You think, oh, you know, they said they were in the market for such and such item, but maybe they went to look at all my competitors and maybe they've decided I'm too expensive. Resist the urge to do that. That is living in your brain and creating a reality in your brain that is untrue. All you know, and the only real data you have is that they haven't returned your call. So what if instead you decide that all it means is that they've not returned your call? You could go so far as to decide they're busy. Now, I just moved to Houston about 2.5 years ago. And I actually went to university here. I went to Rice here many years ago, and it was trafficky and crazy then, but it's even crazier 20 something years later. So I have decided, this is a case where I make meaning. I have decided when I am in traffic in Houston and someone cuts me off, which happens, almost every day when you drive, I have decided that every one of those people is on their way to the hospital and has a medical emergency. Okay, now I'm kind of saying that as a joke, right? Because of course it can't all be true. But if I don't decide that, then I have to either remain in a neutral state in my mind, or I'm at risk of deciding that they have disrespected me or that they are a rude person. And that isn't useful to me. That doesn't keep me in the frame of mind I want to be in. So that's another example of how we make meaning all the time in people-to-people situations. All right, now what about our people are meaning makers, remember, and the problem is we're not always right. The last section's about self-talk. Particularly right now, when you are getting the news, when you are hearing information, when you are deciding what this information that is all around us and all these messages are coming to you, you have to decide what it means to you. And you need to be very careful about the words you say to yourself in your own head. Most of us would never say to another person the self-condemning, unhelpful, unloving, unkind things that we say to ourselves. Okay, deep down, all those insecurities that you know are true, that you think about yourself, when you rehearse them and you practice worry and you practice fear and you practice that self-condemning, you'll never get out of this, you don't have what it takes to get through this. When you talk to yourself that way, you are stifling creativity and the ability to pivot and sell and invent. And so I really want to encourage you not to make the outside things that we're hearing come into your brain and settle in your brain. Be very careful what you tell yourself all day long and think through what kind of thoughts do you entertain. My last point, second and last point, is principle number 2, is that now more than ever, your offer to a customer must be clear. Now, at risk of stating the obvious, I want to say, I know that no one is trying to be unclear, but actually we're unclear all the time. We either give too many choices. We literally have things on our website, on our brochure, in conversations with people that we're actually not prepared to offer right now. We just called for takeout to a place around the corner from us. I don't want to name what it is, but we called, and the first on the phone, we were thinking probably the website didn't look updated, so we decided we would call to place our takeout order. And the first 7 things that we named, they can't actually fulfill right now. Now, I think it's super smart for a restaurant to pare down their menu right now. I don't have a problem with the fact that they did it. It was just that it was frustrating because it was unclear. Right? That's a place to update your site or begin the call by saying, hi, this is so-and-so, so glad you called us. We do have a modified menu. So can I tell you what we're selling today? That would have been helpful. Okay. So more than ever, we want to be sure that we're crystal clear about what we're offering to our customers. Let me give you a little bit of psychology as to why that is. There's a ton of research out there. I think that I've heard the number as high as 10,000, where people say that you get 10,000 messages a day that come at you. So you have the news, television, social media, texts, phone calls, emails. If you're like me, you've got 5 email addresses. I really have 5 email addresses. Don't ask, it's a long story. I have a lot of email addresses. I mean, I get a lot of information all day long. And all day long, my brain is trying to figure out what I need because it's burning calories to keep me alive. And it's asking, what do I need to survive? And once I'm at survival level, it says, what do I need to thrive? That's the thrive part. You guys, most of us sell things about thriving. Not very many of us are at the survive level. If you are, that's awesome because everyone always needs that. But most of us are selling things that are about thriving. And so with thriving, we have to make the offers really clear because otherwise people go, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it. And we don't want anybody doing that to us. Other research says that we have between 6 and 10 seconds to capture someone's attention on the website in a sales email, with a social media post, or with a voicemail. 6 to 10 seconds. In 6 to 10 seconds, they decide if they're going to leave the page, hang up, stop listening to the message, start skimming, or just abandon. In electronic commerce, we call it abandoning the cart, right? They literally just abandon and leave. Okay, so an analogy I want you to keep in mind when you go back and look at what you're selling. Go back and look at what you're offering and make sure you're saying it in the simplest language possible, preferably leading with your sales language with what you do to actually serve the customer. Most people start with talking about themselves, but actually it's better for the customer and clearer and gets to that 6 to 10 second decision when you start talking about actually the customer's needs before you describe yourself. That's an ideal way to present yourself. Now the bowling balls, these are bowling balls in case you couldn't tell, and the bowling balls are sitting here because what they represent is every time you give someone a lot to read or a lot to listen to. It could be in a sales conversation over Zoom or a phone call or back to when we can sell in person or as your shops are opening up as people come in person. When you have long descriptions or complicated offers, it's like you have, I'm holding this 8-pound bowling ball, and it's like you hand this 8-pound bowling ball to the prospective customer and you say, here's what we do. Okay, so if you do those things and you make it too confusing, it's like the 2 bowling balls you gave me are covered in Vaseline. And what happens is they start slipping out, right? I'm back to this slide, right? I'm back to this point. What am I trying to do all day long with my 10,000 messages? I'm trying to survive and thrive, and I'm trying to conserve calories. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what every human's trying to do. So if you make it too hard, the bowling balls are going to fall. They're going to ignore you. You're not going to break through. They're not going to return your calls, and they're just going to be confused. And since we care about people and we're in the business to serve others, we don't want them to be confused. That's not good. Okay. So there's all kinds of ways that we can simplify what we're doing, but the 6th to 8th grade average of reading level is a great place to start because it makes us simplify what we're saying. And don't think for a second, please do not worry that you're going to look unprofessional or that it's going to be too simple. People they're so far over on the other issue of having industry specific language and being unclear that by correcting and coming back, you're going to get closer to center. Okay, I promise that exercise will be. What do we do right now? Customers need a simple path to follow. This might mean that literally on your website, if you don't have this, you might want to say, want to work with us? Want to learn more? Number 1, schedule a call. Number 2, we'll discuss your needs. Number 3, we'll propose the perfect plan. Or if you actually sell something, you have a button that says buy now. If you sell now in Zoom land and you sell consulting services or something where you actually really have to have a pretty lengthy conversation, the step might be inviting people to have a conversation with you. But when you send things that have words like login or see a demo or start now, people don't know what that means. They don't know what it means. So make sure the steps are super, super, super clear. Now, another suggestion I would make for you is that your emails want to have clear next steps. So every time you communicate with someone, make sure that you say, if I don't hear from you by Tuesday, I'm going to give you a call. Or to schedule a call with me, click this link. And you've already preset through some type of a tool. There's all kinds of tools out there, but something like Calendly is a tool I like, Calendly, Calendly. It means that you can have your schedule set up and someone can put themselves in a time slot to talk with you. Another way you can give people a simple path to follow is reduce choices. People are overwhelmed right now. And so by actually giving fewer choices, it makes it so much better. So reducing choices, restaurants having a shorter menu, this is all fine. It's actually really helpful to people because they have so many decisions to make. People at home that are not usually there. Life is different right now. So simple is better. That is my advice to you, is simpler is better. 2 things. If you go to this link, please grab your phone, take a message of it. You can also get to this through my website, which is extraboldsales.com. The name of my company is Extra Bold Sales. So extraboldsales.com is my website. If you download my free PDF document, which is called 3 Phrases You Are Using That Are Killing Your Sales Leads. This is where I list 3 things people say when selling that I wish everyone would strike from their vocabulary. They're things that are meant to be polite, but that actually undermine your credibility and are confusing. They're confusing to your customer. If you download this, you will receive a weekly email from me where I give sales tips. So that's kind of like a newsletter. It's not a newsletter because it's not that long. It's shorter than that, but it's a weekly sales email. I'd love to communicate with you. You can follow me by doing that. Also, this next week, I'm launching what I'm calling my Come and Go group coaching. What this is we are getting as a group on a webinar every Monday afternoon for an hour. And I'm talking through people's sales questions right now. So you post your questions ahead of time to me. This link tells you all of the ways that this works. So I won't go through all those details now, but you post your questions and we talk through them as a group, and you benefit from hearing other people's questions, which stimulates your thinking as well. And I call it Come and Go because you only make a commitment 1 month at a time. So that if you want the information, you know how to reach either of us. So this is my email, this is my website, and I would be happy to field any questions that you have.